Okay, so most of us really think we know the story of Rosa Parks. But today, we're going to go way beyond that simplified myth and uncover the powerful, lifelong revolutionary she truly was. Let's dive in.
You know the story, right? The one we all learned in school? A tired seamstress, just worn out from a long day, decides she's finally had enough and spontaneously refuses to give up her seat. It's this simple, powerful image of an accidental hero.
But what if that story, the one we've been telling for decades, isn't the whole story? Not even close. What if the real story is about a trained, deliberate, and lifelong radical whose act on that bus was anything but accidental? See, to understand the woman on the bus, we have to go back to the very beginning. Her resistance wasn't born in 1955 on some random Tuesday, no. It was forged in the fire of the Jim Crow South, decades earlier.
Rosa Louise McCauley was raised on her grandparents' farm in a place called Pine Level, Alabama. And this environment was defined by two things: absolute terror and incredible resistance. Her grandparents were formerly enslaved people, and they instilled in her this powerful sense of dignity in a world that was literally designed to crush it.
And this is where it gets really interesting. She had this early model of resistance right in her own home. This comes from her own memories. She remembered watching her grandfather, Sylvester Edwards, just standing guard in the doorway with a shotgun as the KKK marched right past their house. This wasn't nonviolence, this was armed self-defense. And that lesson, that image, it stuck with her for her entire life.
So you see how all these pieces start to fit together to shape her? You've got her grandparents' stories of survival, her grandfather's armed defiance, her mother insisting that education was a tool for freedom, and then the horrifying, ever-present reality of lynchings. These weren't just background details, they were the absolute building blocks of a revolutionary.
And this brings us to a crucial point that is so often just left out of the history books. Rosa Parks wasn't just a seamstress who stumbled into history. She was a professional, a seasoned, trained, and deeply committed activist for the NAACP.
Just look at this timeline. Her work built up over years and years. As early as 1943, she was the secretary of the Montgomery NAACP. And get this, just a few months before her famous arrest, she was at the Highlander Folk School, which was basically a training center for civil rights leaders, actively sharpening her skills. The whole idea that her act was spontaneous just completely falls apart when you see this decade of dedicated, dangerous work.
And her job as an investigator was incredibly dangerous. I mean, she traveled the back roads of Alabama, often all by herself, to interview victims and witnesses of the most horrific crimes you can imagine: lynchings, police brutality, sexual assault. She did this knowing the risks, laying the groundwork for the movement that was about to explode.
Okay, so with all of that context in mind, let's go back and re-examine that fateful day on the bus, because it wasn't random at all. It was the culmination of years of work, and as it turns out, it was also deeply personal.
And here is the crucial piece of personal history. The driver who ordered her to move in 1955 was a man named James F. Blake. But it wasn't their first run-in. 12 years earlier, the same guy had ordered her off his bus and then just drove off, leaving her standing in the rain. So when he demanded her seat in 1955, she wasn't just defying a law, she was defying him.
After her arrest, she was fined $10 plus another $4 in court fees. $14. That was the price tag for an act that would literally change the course of American history.
So here's a really important question. Why build the whole movement around Rosa Parks? She actually wasn't the first person to be arrested for this. 9 months earlier, a 15-year-old named Claudette Colvin had done the exact same thing. But the movement's leaders made a strategic choice. Parks was 42, married, employed, and widely seen as respectable. They believed she was the ideal figure, the perfect test case, to win not just in a court of law, but in the court of public opinion.
And her own words tell you everything you need to know about her state of mind. She wasn't thinking about how tired she was from work. No. She was thinking about her history, her purpose, and a lifetime of struggle. She later said, "I knew that I had the strength of my ancestors with me." This was a conscious, historical act.
And the impact was just monumental. Her arrest sparked the Montgomery bus boycott, which lasted for an incredible 381 days. 40,000 black citizens participated, organizing this massive, complex system of carpools to sustain the protest. It was an economic and logistical masterpiece that ultimately ended with the Supreme Court striking down bus segregation for good.
But here's where the story usually just stops, and that is a huge mistake. The boycott wasn't the end of her activism. It was just the beginning of a brand new chapter. The struggle was about to move north, to a new front line. After the boycott, death threats forced the Parks family to leave Montgomery. They moved to Detroit, hoping for safety and opportunity, but what she found there was what she called the northern promised land that wasn't. She discovered pretty quickly that racism wasn't just a Southern problem. It was a deeply American problem, woven into housing, jobs, and policing everywhere.
And guess what? She didn't stop fighting. For over 2 decades, from 1965 all the way to 1988, she worked in the Detroit office of Congressman John Conyers. And she wasn't just some figurehead. She was a legislative aide on the ground, tackling the nitty-gritty issues of police brutality, job discrimination, and housing inequality. She was continuing the exact same fight, just on a different front.
Now, because of her central role in the Montgomery movement, Rosa Parks is almost always linked to Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and his philosophy of nonviolence. And, that's true to an extent.
But who did she see as her personal hero? Well, the answer might actually surprise you.
In her own words, she stated that her views on self-defense were more closely aligned with Malcolm X. And this connects right back to her grandfather standing on that porch with his shotgun. She believed in meeting force with force when it was necessary. She was a supporter of the Black Power movement, showing this ideological complexity that the simple, neat myth completely erases.
So when we really look back, her true legacy is so much bigger than a single seat on a single bus. It's a story of a lifetime of calculated, courageous, and absolutely relentless struggle.
Her story proves that real social change doesn't just happen spontaneously. It's the result of decades of thankless, often dangerous work. Her influence was global. Nelson Mandela chanted her name when he was released from prison. And she never stopped working, co-founding an institute to mentor young people. Upon her death, she became the first woman to lie in honor in the U.S. Capitol Rotunda, a final testament to her incredible life's work.
In the end, Rosa Parks' life teaches us that real, lasting change is never an accident. It's planned, it's organized, it's built, brick by brick over a lifetime. Which kind of leaves us with a question to think about. What are we building today?